Thank you. Thank you, Ilya. Good morning, everybody from the United Kingdom. I'd like to begin by paying tribute to Ilya and to all the local organizers in Israel who have worked so hard under such difficult circumstances to deliver this meeting. It is my profound regret that I am not there to be with you in person. Obviously, the international situation has rendered travel difficult, and had I set out at the point at which I was told no flights were leaving the United Kingdom, I think I would probably have reached Marseille about now, but I would still have the Mediterranean between me and the lecture theatre. And so I think it's probably a fair question to ask. Why are we talking about international collaboration as an international imperative when scientists from across the world can't even meet for a cup of coffee in a friendly nation? And I think my answer to that question is probably captured in this slide. All of us have a common problem and a common enemy. And I'm going to illustrate that just with some data from my own country here in the United Kingdom. Just 6 major health conditions drive 60% of all the sickness and all the death at home, and those who suffer from them don't suffer from just one of these conditions, they suffer from many of them at once. And what these conditions have in common is that your greatest risk of suffering from them is your age. It is your number of birthdays. And why, then, has this been ignored? Why are we told to watch our weight, to watch how much alcohol we drink, not to smoke, to take exercise, etc., etc.? And this is because the aging process was not understood. And therefore, there's a tendency to focus on modifiable risk factors. I think, as Walter has shown us, for some people, those modifiable risk factors are dispensable. For the rest of us, they can certainly help. But the aging process was sidelined because it was not understood. It was deemed to be too complicated to be understood. It was said that nothing could be done. And it is a small step from saying that nothing could be done to saying that nothing should be done. But I think it is fair to say of the gerontological community, many of whom are represented here today, I see many colleagues from AFAR, the European Union, will be speaking, that the gerontological community was not deterred by the enormity of its own goals, an important lesson for our current time. And they persevered, and they did not believe that aging was too complicated to be understood. And sure enough, it turns out that it is not too complicated to be understood. Many of the major mechanisms, the hallmarks as we call them, that cause aging and age-related disease are now known in sufficient detail that we can begin to plan interventions targeting them. And this means that the game has now changed. I am also here as the coordinator of the UK Aging Networks, 11 knowledge exchange networks which exist to facilitate collaboration both between disciplines in the UK and internationally. And I will show you some of the things we've already achieved in the next few minutes. These networks exist through the vision of our research councils and an answer to our House of Lords, who proposed that the fundamental biology of aging was attackable. And we in the UK are not the only country that have recognized this. Saudi Arabia is offering $1 billion a year as much as the United States for research into this fundamental field. And this is what is driving the investment. The recognition that a few, you can call them aging mechanisms if you want. I often prefer to think of them as health maintenance mechanisms, cause not just those things that we've historically considered to be the diseases of aging. I've put a few up there. There are at least 190 others. But the natural changes that we think of, the grey hair and wrinkles, and the things we find hard to classify. And this is an incredibly hopeful slide, because what it means is that targeting these pathways will allow us to target multiple late life pathologies and impairments simultaneously. We know through the work of Helen Fraser and Linda Partridge that these aging mechanisms target and predict different subsets of human pathologies. This is important information allowing us to design trials. And we also know that targeting one hallmark mechanism tends to positively modulate all of the others. We are dealing with a simple, attackable network. What fundamental areas of research should we target next as a global community of scientists, clinicians, entrepreneurs, and innovators seeking to improve the lives of older people everywhere? The American Federation for Aging Research, on whose board I am honored to sit, recently took a look at this. For its 40th anniversary, it convened a series of global think tanks, inviting researchers from around the world to give their views about what's needed next. That document is on our website. I invite all of you to take a look at it. I have simply pulled out from that document a few of what I think are the brightest hopes for older people everywhere. And I'm going to walk you in about the next 7 minutes through these. This is what older people can hope for. This is the work of the chair of our advisory group at UCAN, Dame Linda Partridge. This is the result of simply treating male and female mice for 1 week on and 1 week off with the lowest possible doses of 2 off-patent medicines that affect one of the core hallmark mechanisms. These animals, as you can see from the data, are living much longer. And the reason they are living much longer is because this drug intervention has made them much healthier. And this type of approach is not simply a laboratory curiosity. The work of Joan Manick, among others, has shown us that it is possible to repurpose drugs that are already in inventory to produce really important beneficial health effects in things like the immune response. And this is an important point to put before this conference. As we all know, 90% of clinical trials fail, but a significant proportion, 50, perhaps 60% of drug repurposing trials succeed. So the prospects for targeting the fundamental mechanisms of aging are bright. And as a colleague and former board member, Jay Olshansky, I have no doubt will show us in the course of these discussions, only through targeting these basic mechanisms will we achieve the significant improvements in health and thus possibly in lifespan that we seek. If we look at another bright hope, targeting senescent cells, it's known that the removal of senescent cells in rodent models will give you significant improvements in mice health and thus in mouse lifespan. And I'm happy to see that there are more than 20 ongoing senolytic trials at this moment. We are winning this battle. What is needed next? In my opinion, and I know it's also Ilya's, I hope we can persuade it to be that of this meeting. What is needed are focused collaborations between countries, whether these are bilateral, trilateral, or multilateral. We need mechanisms for knowledge exchange across and between disciplines, not just between countries. And we need organizations like VETEC, like AFAR, willing to bear the administrative burden of supporting these initiatives, doing that legwork that puts the coffee on the benches and the grant applications in front of the experienced referees. And what I'm going to do in the last couple of minutes is show you a little bit of what we've been able to achieve within our own networks, working multilaterally from the UK. One joint grant bringing together chemists, Dr. Rattray, and clinicians, bioinformaticians in America, using UK Biobank data to pick up multi-omic markers of frailty to improve the chances of success for older people, putting together Iranian cell biologists, Russian synthetic chemists, British clinicians and bioengineers to design a functional bioartificial liver to overcome the challenges of senescence induced by liver toxins. This device could go to phase 3 tomorrow. And to push further on, we've put together consortia involving Japanese clinicians, American geneticists, British chemists, Brazilian and Austrian cell biologists to target Werner's syndrome, possibly the closest thing you will ever see to true human accelerated aging. If a treatment works in this disease, it will almost certainly work in you. But should we be frightened of success? What will a world with better health for older people look like? And the people who are most keenly interested in this are our pensions, life insurance, and risk management industries. And working together with Joseph Liu at Legal & General and Ulrich Stengler, based in the United States, working for Nationwide, we've tried to answer this to a small extent. We have taken the data coming out of geroscience and fed it into standard industry models to calculate the effects of these new treatments on lifespan. And since, as I hope I've shown you, these treatments work by improving health, lifespan extension is roughly equivalent to multi-morbidity postponement. I won't bore you too much with the mechanics of this beyond saying that we have taken clinical data from the rodent models. We've asked basic questions. Is this a drug in inventory? Is this a drug where there's only 2 milligrams on Earth? Okay. And how do we take it? Do we take it like a vaccine where it's once? Do we take it like antibiotics where it's as needed? Do we take it like hypertension medicine where it's needed every day? We've put in the best available data. And if we were ignorant to the real world and we applied mTOR inhibition, for example, and humans behaved like mice, we would expect to see an average 65-year-old to get 4 years of good health. If you apply the real world parameters against that, what you find is that shrinks. The best case scenario is that right now, a 65-year-old would get about 0.8 of a year of good health. Why does that matter? Doesn't sound like much, does it? 0.8 of a year of real improved health. But if you translate that using accepted financial models, that's about $500 billion to the UK economy, and our budget is only about 1.3 to 1.5 trillion. And so that's something I would like to leave you with, that a better world for older people, which is what we're striving for, is also going to be a better world for everybody else. Thank you for listening. I hope this conference exceeds our expectations.
Thank you very much, Richard. Thank you for your critical support. You know, the motto of this conference was, whatever we do will be helpful. This is just the first step, even though because of security and some people could not attend. This is the first step. We'll build it up and continue. I think we can have one or two questions for Richard, if anybody wants. Okay, Israel. Menachem, sorry. Where's the mic? Behind me? Yeah.
We will cure aging, and echoing into the future at every conference after that will be, where's the mic?
I love all the future technologies, has all the present ones.
Hi, thank you for the overview. I really appreciate it. I'm a student at the Weizmann Institute. I'm just getting into the field of aging. Something I noticed last year and also this year in your talk is that a lot of times the focus is on, when we talk about aging as a process, right? Like you age throughout life, but oftentimes the research is focused on older people and like how do we treat people who are already aged? And I wonder if you could maybe give some insight into why the field is so focused on like older people, where it seems like as a proportion of the population, there's a lot of young people who are aging right now. And a lot of times the research that I hear is more focused on like, okay, well, we have old people, how do we reverse or buy them those extra few years? Or maybe if we focused on interventions for people who are aging, like starting the process, we might be able to have more impact in the long run.
That is a more profound question than perhaps even you realize as asking it. I'll do my best to answer it as best I can. I think it's a good opportunity to unpack something which is often forgotten about older people in general, which is their diversity. About 20% of older people look like me. All right, they're 60 to 65, top 2% of earners. Their interests are their gym, their wine club, and keeping up to date. 2 of those interests are mine, and I'm not interested in keeping up to date. All right. These people are so healthy and comfortably off that they should be helping other people, basically. They're not my problem. My problem are people like my grandmother. Social class D, former manual job, multiple comorbidities, lonely, struggle to fill their day. These are the people who are in greatest need of the interventions that the field can deliver. Not simply because of costs on the healthcare system. That, to my mind, dehumanizes our older people. It turns them into units of consumption. And so, because I'm speaking to this meeting and at this time, the example I take is my dad. My dad died 3 years ago at the start of the network. All his life, he wanted to see the Middle East. He wanted to see the Nile, and he wanted to see Masada. And by the time he was free enough to do so, he was too sick to travel. 3 weeks or 2 weeks of additional good health would have been enough for my dad to fulfill his dreams. He never got to do that. So I went instead. He would have loved it. But the advantage, that's what we're trying to achieve. And that's why I think the focus is there. But what I also think we need to bear in mind about these interventions is this. The quaternary care that you see for old people aging badly is very, very expensive. Primary interventions are relatively cheap. So if we were able to save money on those quaternary interventions, this would render it cost effective to intervene earlier at stages where disease or decline of function is barely apparent. And that's where I think the benefits of these interventions for younger age groups come. And we have a worked example of this, but we don't talk about it in those terms. The example is hypertension. Hypertension medicines are targeting fundamental aging processes, and they turn out to be among the most cost-effective interventions globally that we have. So the sharp point is older people, and those of us on the sharp point tend to think about that. But I think many of us are cognizant of the benefits that can accrue earlier in the life course. And thank you very much for bringing that to my attention.
Thank you very much, Richard. Indeed, a profound question. More proof that further research is needed.